Hey guys, I'm David Plug, and today I wanted to make a quick video, or as quick as I can make it, on chopping up samples on the model samples. So I had someone ask me like what's the best way to do it, and I gave them kind of a bit of a rundown, but I figured out two ways of chopping up samples, or two ways you could possibly chop samples in this thing. The only difference between them is one is for creation. Let's say you want to make a beat to solo over like I do, or you just want to make a beat to rap over, to jam, whatever the case is. If you are using this as a beat machine in a sense, or to create the foundation for a song, then this method, the first method, might help you. The second method would be more for jamming. If you were using this as like, hey, I kind of want to play this out, you might make like a couple patterns with different samples in the same loop. All right, so for now I'm going to give you a rundown right quick of what it is. Then I'll create the beat and show you how to use it. This is the first method. So what I usually like to do, I already have it set up here. This is my sample. The way it was recorded, I don't know why they recorded it like that. There's just like a random, it's extra long at the end, and he gets up and you could hear him moving, which is cool. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. But regardless, it doesn't matter how he did it, as long as for the most part the sample's on time. So what I did in order to get this here in a usable format, because technically you hear the sample and you could take any sample, using, if you saw my other videos, or if you know how to use the model samples at all, this button right here kind of is the sample button, and you could click on it and go through all your presets or whatnot, right? So most of the times you find a sample, you put it in here, they all have their own tempo. Now, if the tempo isn't written to the sample, you might not know what tempo it's in, or you might not be able to use it. So what I like to do is that I'll play the sample, then I'll kind of like 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. Now that's not necessarily in time with the sample, but just to give you an example, I'll play the sample and then I'll kind of like feel out the timing of it. Then using function and this little metronome, it says tap BPM, I'll tap it until I get, as close of a precise timing with the sample. So right now I already have it set up on time, and I have it this one trigger here and then nothing for the rest of it, because I have it in time. So now the sample is going to play through perfectly in time, switch on time, and then hit the one on time. So, you know what I'm saying? If you noticed, I was switching pages just to show you that it would switch to the next page, which is technically the next bar, on the one where it's what it should. And that's what you should focus on, maybe changing the BPM like up by 1 or 2 or down by 1 or 2, depending on if it's on time or not. So this way, I have it here. It's I guess the first method. It's a lot easier for, let's say I want to go in and build drums. Now I could just add drums to this, and that sample will be playing in the background the whole time. Alright, so now let's say I wanted to do something like that, right? I go in here and well, for one, this is not where I wanted to, but let's say, I wanted to kind of do that little, and then I wanted it to go here, play it again, and for the last one I wanted it to play the next note, but it doesn't play the next chord. Why? Because it's just playing the sample. So what I would do here is that I'd grab this, and then you'd have to test it out, but I would kind of go around here, Let's see if I could loop this. All right, so it's not as easy as I would like to say. I haven't found a shortcut to make this, perfect. But now that I'm messing with the sample start time, eventually we're gonna get to this part again. Okay, and that was too late. Another thing that's happening is the velocity is all the way down. But you see, now it's in time. So what I did was that I used the parameter locking, and if you've seen my last video, I used the parameter lock, which is that you hold down the trigger and you mess with whatever knob and it'll lock it into place. So you hold this down and you adjust the start time if you want, let's say, to play the next chop. That would be technically one chop, and this is the second chop. That's a little off, like a hair. It's a little bit off, but it's just to show you. That was good. All right, second method. I already have something created, so let's just break it down to make this as quick as I possibly can. The second method is to add that one sample that I showed you in the first method, and instead of having it on one track, you have it on 3 to 4 tracks. This method is cool if you have an intricate pattern laid out with the samples doing different things, and let's say you have more than one pattern also doing intricate things with those samples. You could chain the patterns and then mute them as you go. Just if you want to do something interesting with jamming, it might not be actually that jammable, and it might be very specific, but hey, there are people who might want to use this method, and if this is the method you want to use, I'm happy to teach you how to. So basically, you take that one sample, you have it on 4 tracks. Now how you do it is that you kind of want to, in a sense, chop it. So what I did was that I went in here, took that one sample, and before the sample would just go all the way through, and now it's only stopping right before the next chord. So it's still in time because the tempo was set prior, so 123 is the tempo for this one. So I load the same sample onto this one and onto this one. Now the reason why, as you can see, they're all different chords is because what I did was that I took this one and it starts on the 1, right? Then I changed the sample length to 39 here, so it cuts right before the next chord. Then I took the next sample, and the sample start now is on 40 because that's when the next chord starts. Sample length on 19 because that's around the length of the chord before the next chord. And then I did the same thing for the third one, 59, 35. So now we have 3 different samples, technically, but it's really the same sample chopped up. And let's say this was a major chord and this one's a minor chord, and that's a major 7 chord or whatever. You could do interesting things like play that same chord over here and then move to a minor chord. apologize for the mess ups. I have no idea what I'm doing or what I'm playing. I'm just kind of improvising just so you can see. And then you would want to do something like add a drum section to this. I already have something laid out. The only downside to doing this is that, for me at least, when I'm creating a beat the other way, I'll have like my drums laid out, my sample here, my bass here, and that way I can mute the kick if I wanted to, or I can mute the hi-hat if I wanted to. Now, I'm not saying you can't only use 2 samples, chop them up, and have the kick, hi-hat, snare, and bass, if that's what you want to do. But I'm just showing you how to do it. So that's the only downside. You can't mute the kick, you can't mute the snare, you can't mute the hi-hat if you're going to use 3 to 4 tracks for the samples, and you're going to sample lock 1 drum. So basically, I just sample locked the kick, the hi-hat, and the snare to this 1 track. So that's 1 track is playing my drums completely versus having 3 tracks or 4 tracks playing my drums. Now, if you want to know how to do this, I have another video on sample locking that will explain that too, so I'll try to link that for you. And then for the next and then I'll use this track for the bass. Not the best bass line, but hey, it's just an example. Well, that's method 2. And let me know if you guys want to see any other videos or have any other great questions like this one where I could show you at least my methods on how I would get it done. Alright, so real quick, I forgot to mention the third method. Now, the third method is not the best method, and it's not the worst method, but it's definitely not the easiest method. And that's if you already have a DAW and you already kind of are into music production, you could take one of those long samples or a couple of those long samples, chop them up in your DAW, pre-chopped to the length that you want, and then hopefully you know what tempo they are by then, so you can set your model samples to the right tempo. And then using the transfer files that Model Samples comes with, that you download from their website, you can transfer the samples onto your model samples, just like you would for any samples. So basically you do that, and then using the sample lock technique that I kind of showed, the parameter lock technique I showed you in the first method, you could do the same thing with the sample lock technique, which I showed you in the second method. Whatever, you could use one of those two. You don't have to change the sample start and sample length, and you can put them in each individual track if that's how you want to play them. The only thing about that is that it's just it takes a little bit. So and it's a lot of work to have to pre-chop them when you can just find a cool sample you like and mess with it in the model samples. I also just kind of enjoy having these limitations of like, how do I do this? You know what I'm saying? So then I'll figure it out, and that's how I made this video. So I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you guys have any other questions, or any other videos you want me to make, let me know.